Hi everyone, welcome you all. So in the today's video, I'm going to show you how we can achieve OAuth 2 authentication or how we can handle OAuth 2 authentication in Cypress. So before that, we need to understand what is OAuth authentication and what are the components are involved in the OAuth 2 authentication. So let us try to understand this by taking the example. So especially in OAuth 2 authentication, mainly there are three components. One is called client application. So from there, we are going to send all HTTP requests like get request, post request, delete request, and so on. The other component is called resource server. So which contains all the resources. And whenever you are sending the HTTP request, we are getting the response or we are getting the resources from the resource server. This first component is client application. Second component is resource server. Now the third component is what? Authorization server, or we can say auth server. So in OAuth 2 authentications, especially, we will take the help of auth server. And these are third-party authentication. So whenever the resource is providing to the client, so once the resource server will get the request from the client before sending the response, the resource server will check the auth 2 token from the auth server. So whether the auth 2 token is valid or not. If auth 2 token is valid, then only the resource server will send the response to the client application. Okay. Now let us understand the exact flow, how we can achieve this OAuth 2 authentication. So in OAuth 2 authentication, as a prerequisite, first we need to create a client application. So we need to create a client application. And once you create your client application, so there are so many applications are supporting OAuth 2 authentication like a GitHub or Facebook or Twitter, okay, or Dropbox. There are so many applications are supporting OAuth 2 authentication. So as a first step, what we can do is we have to log in into that particular site and we have to create our client application. So we have to first create a client application. So once you created your client application, we will get client ID and a client secret. These are the two important things which we need to have in OAuth 2 authentication. So in the first step, once you created your application, client application, we will get client ID and client secret. And once you get this client ID and client secret, then by using this client ID and client secret, we will send authentication request to the auth server. By taking the help of client ID and secret, we will send auth request to the auth server. So that auth server will again give us our code, authentication code. So this is the first step. So once we send the request to the auth server will provide the authorization code. So finally, we need client ID, client secret, and authorization code. So these three things we have to first get from the client application: client ID, client secret, and authorization code. So these are the three things we have to capture from the client application. So authorization code you will get once you send a request to the auth server, we will get the authorization code. So these are the prerequisites. We need to have client ID, client secrets, and authorization code. Fine. So once we have this, then what we need to do is we are going to send an authorization request to the auth server to get the OAuth 2 token. That's the most important, which we need to send HTTP request to the server. So we need OAuth 2 token. So how to extract this token, how to get this token? We have to send auth URL. In the post request, we have to send auth URL to this auth server. That's the first step. We need to request a token. For requesting the token, we have to send a URL and which contains a client ID, client secrets, and auth code. So once you send a request to the auth server will give the response token to the client application. So we'll get the response token. So once you get a response token, by using that response token, we can send a request to the resource server along with the token. And once our request is hit to the resource server, then how resource server will provide the resource? It will not provide immediately because we are already sent the token along with the request. So resource server will check this token is correct or not. So again, this will connect to auth server by sending the same token. And once it is get the response, okay, token is valid, then it will send the resource to the client application. So this is how exactly OAuth 2 authentication works. So in the first step, we need to create application. and then we'll extract client ID and client secret. Then also we need to get authorization code from the auth server. Once you get these three details, by using these three details, client ID, client secret, and auth code, we have to generate authentication token, auth2 token. And once you have the token, we can use the token in our HTTP request. Now, resource server will again recheck the token is correct or not by communicating with auth server. If it is a valid, then our resource server will provide the proper response to the client application. So this is how exactly auth2 authentication works. So now let us apply the same thing for GitHub application. So we have a GitHub repository. So in the GitHub repository, they have provided different type of APIs which are required auth2 authentication. So let us try this auth2 authentication on GitHub APIs. So for that, what is the first thing is we need to create our client application in the GitHub repository. And once you create your client application, we will get client ID, client secret. And by using this, again, we have to get the authorization code from the auth server. So these are the few things which we need to have before sending the request to the auth server for getting the token. So first step, let us create an application in the GitHub repository. So for that, what I'm going to do is I will just go to the GitHub repository and log into the GitHub repository. And once you log into the GitHub repository, so just go to your settings on profile or settings. You can just go to settings. So inside the settings, you can just go to the developer settings. Inside the developer settings, you can see OAuth apps. So when you click on this OAuth apps, it will show you what are all apps which are already created, client application which are already created, which will be displayed here. So now we are going to create new OAuth application. So to create a new application, so we can just click on new OAuth application, new OAuth app. And here we need to provide the application name. So I'm providing something called, let's say, Cypress testing. So this is my application name I'm giving. And homepage URL. So these URLs can be anything. So you can just say, I'm giving my blog URL. So it will be useful. So we need to provide something like a home URL and callback URL. So you can just provide anything in this particular URL. So home URL and authorization callback URL, both are provided. And then once you click on this register application, so then the new application is got registered. Now you can see here, there is a new client ID is got generated. So we have to save this client ID somewhere. And along with the client ID, we have to get client secret. So if I just scroll down here, there is a button called generate a new client secret. So you just click on this button and it will ask you GitHub password. So I'm just logging into this. Okay, once it is done, now you can see the new client secret is got generated automatically. I'm just copying this client secret and keep it somewhere. Later, we will use this client secret. Okay, so once you get a client ID and then client secret, and you can simply see all the details and simply say update application. Done. So now my application is ready. So client application, we have successfully created the first step. So client application, we have successfully created. And also we have captured client ID and also client secret. Now, what is the next step? We need to get authorization code, because if you don't have this code along with the client ID and client secret, we cannot generate the token. So now we need to create authorization code. So to create an authorization code, so GitHub is provided one URL. So to get authorization code, so the URL will be like this. So I'm opening in another browser. So this is the URL. So http://github.com login auth authorize. And here we need to provide the client ID. So whatever client ID just now we generated, so we have to specify the client ID as a query parameter like this, because this URL will be redirected to some other URL, and then that will give you the authorization code. So replace this client ID like this and then press enter. As soon as you have done this, it will ask you the authentication. So again, click on authorize Pawan OL training. This is my username of my GitHub repository. Once you click on this, so this will automatically, it will redirect to my callback URL. And then you can see in the URL, this is a code, authorization code, which is got generated. Okay, so this authorization code will expire very soon. So we need to save this authorization code, and multiple times we have to create this authorization code. So for now, I'm just storing this authorization code here. Okay. So this is my authorization code. Okay. So I'm just saved this authorization code somewhere. This is also most important. Okay. So once you get the authorization code, that is enough. Now we have achieved the first thing. So we have created client application. Then we have extracted client ID and client secret. And then we have also get the authentication code. So once we have these details, then first step, what we have to do, we have to request authorization server for token or OAuth2 token. So how to request? So we need another URL, that is a post request we have to send. Okay. So now let's go to the Postman tool and to access token. So only one request we have to send, which is a post request we have to send to the auth server. So we are sending the request to auth server to get the token. So this is the URL which we have to use. So currently, okay, so let me remove all these things. So this is the request URL which we have to send, which is basically post request. This is the URL, http://github.com login OAuth access token. So these things will not be having. So this is the actual URL which we have to send to get the access token. Okay, so along with this URL, we need to provide three things. What are those three things? Client ID, client secret, auth code. So these are the three things we have to pass along with this post request. And then it will get you the authorization token. So how to pass this token, how to pass these details in the form of query parameters. So go to query parameters. And here, the first thing is what? Client ID. So client ID we already captured earlier. So I'm just copying the same client ID here. Now the next parameter will be client secret. Client secret. So this is also we have captured from application. So client secret, and the client secret we need to provide here. And the third parameter will be a code, whatever other code we have just now we captured from our URL. So this is our auth code. So this auth code we have to pass. Okay, as a third parameter. Okay, so client ID, client secret, and auth code. So these three things we have to pass along with this token request. So once you have sent this request, this will return access token. That will return access token. So this is the first and second step. So once you send the request of to the auth server post request, then we will get the response token. Okay, so let us try to send this request. Now I'm sending the request, saving this and then sending it. So now we got the access token. Now you can see this is the access token which is generated, and token type is what? Bearer token, which is generated. Now we need to use this particular token to access the resources from the server. So first and second steps are completed. Now we need to go to the third step. So by taking the help of the token, we have to send an actual request to the resource server along with the token so that we will get the response. And internally, our resource server will again check whatever token we are sending along with the request. Our resource server will check the token is valid or not, again by sending the request to the auth server internally. So if the token is valid, then only our resources server will respond with the resources. Okay, if the token is invalid, our response server will give the HTTP 404 error. So now what we need to do is, once we get the response as a token, now we need to exactly send the request for resource. Now let's go to the next request. And here, this is a get request I'm sending to the GitHub repository. So this is basically written all the repositories which are available in my GitHub repository, which is created by me. So here we need to go to authorization section, and in authorization, we have to take the bearer token. And here we need to specify the token, whatever token we have generated in the first request, whatever token we have generated. So get this token from here and put the token in this token list. Okay, and save the request and then send this. So once you have sent this, so we will get the response like this. So we got all the repositories list with my account in the GitHub repository. Okay, so this is how we can achieve OAuth authentication. In the Postman, we can do like this. So let me repeat once again. So what I have done first, we have created a client application, and then we have get client ID, client secret. Again, we have sent one URL to the auth server to get authorization code. And once you get client ID, client secret, auth code, then we have requested auth server once again to get the token. And for that, we have send a token URL. This is the request we have sent, post request. So this is a GitHub URL token, and along with the client ID, client secret, and code. These three details we have sent, and then we got the access token. So once we get an access token, now client application will send the request to the resource server. And along with the request, we also want to pass token. And then resource server internally check this token is correct or not by communicating with auth server. If it is a valid, the resource server will send the resource as a form of response. So that is a response. We got it here in the next request. Okay. So this is how we can simply achieve auth 2 authentication for GitHub application. And it will be slightly differ from one application to another application. Okay. So for GitHub application, this auth code is also required. But if you work with some other application like Twitter or LinkedIn, so this auth code is not required. So client ID, client secret is enough. So by using this client ID and client secret, we can get the access token, and then we will again send the request to the resource server by using that access token. Then we will get the response. So now we will see how we can implement the same thing in Cypress. Okay. So let's go to the VS Code editor. Now I'm going to create a new file, and this is auth 2 authentication. auth 2 authentication.cy.js. Okay. So the first thing what we need to do is we will write a describe block. Let me write a describe block. So describe and two parameters. One is I'll name it as auth 2 and comma arrow function. Okay, now I'll write first block. So what is the first thing which we need to do? I will write everything here. Then we will try to implement one by one. So as a first step, what we have done is we have to get the authorization code that we have to do manually. And now the first thing is what? First step, we have to get the token. So we need to get the access token. That is auth 2 access token. We have to get the access token. So to get auth 2 access token, what is a URL which I have to send? We have to send authorize URL. We have to send access token URL. So this is the access token URL which we have to send. And client ID, we have to client, and we need to pass three details. What are they? We need to pass three query parameters: client ID, client secret, and code. So this is basically post request we have to send. Post request, and these are the query parameters which we have to send: client ID, client secret, and code. So this is step one. Okay, let me just comment like this. Okay. So step one is what? We need to get the auth 2 access token. For that, we need to send the post request by using this URL. And we need to pass this query parameter: client ID, client secret, and code. So this will return the token, access token. So once you get access token, now the second step, what we have to do is, second step, we have to actually send a request to the server. That is get request we have to send. Step one is what? Step two. So step two is what? We need to send actual request to the GitHub repository. Okay. So we need to send get request by using access token. By using access token. Okay. So what is the URL we have to, which we are going to send is we are going to send repository. So get repository. So this is the URL which we are going to send. And by sending this URL, we have to provide the access token, right? So we need to pass authentication. Authentication is what? Access token. So whatever access token we will get from the first post request, the same access token we have to pass along with this request. So these are the two steps we have to implement. Now come to the describe block. Let's try to implement the first one. So here I'm writing one it block. So in the it block, so here getting the access token. So we need to first get the access token. So here I'm writing the description: get auth 2 access token. Okay, now here arrow function I'm writing. Okay, so in this we need to send a request. What type of request it is? Post request we have to send along with these 3 query parameters. So to send the post request, we need to use cy.request, and inside this we have to specify what type of request we are going to send. We are going to send post request. So we are going to send post request, and what is the URL we have to send? That URL should be this one. So this is the access token URL which we have to send. So after that, method, and then URL, and then we need to pass query parameters. So these 3 parameters we have to pass: client ID, client secret, and code. So here what we would say, QS. If you want to pass query parameters, we have to say QS, and multiple parameters are there, so we need to keep inside the curly brace. So what is the first one? Client ID. So client ID, from where we will get? At the beginning, we have already captured the client ID, right? So that client ID, this is the one. So same client ID we have to pass. So I'm using same client ID here. This is my client ID. And similarly, secret ID. So client secret is a parameter. So client ID and client secret. And client secret will be, I already captured the client secret. So now I'm just copying this. So client ID, client secret, and along with that, we need to pass auth code also. Just like in the Postman we have sent, right? So this is the request, token request. Along with this, we are sending client ID, client secret, code. So code also we need to pass. So code, and here in the single quotation, we need to pass this code also. Okay, so code also we need to pass. Fine. So 3 details we have to pass. One is client ID, client secret, and then code. So 3 things we have to pass along with the post request. So once you send this request, we will get a response from it. So from that response, we have to capture access token. Okay, we have to capture access token. Then we'll capture the response in a variable. Let's say response. Okay, and once we get a response, from that response, we have to capture the token. So from this response, so if the token is generated in the JSON format, so simply we can write token, access token, and we can capture. Okay, so but here this is generated in the text format. It is not in the JSON format. So if it is generated in the JSON format, simply we can write JSON path and we can extract this exact value from the access token. But here it is not generated in the JSON format. So what we need to do is, this is actual response, but what is an exact token is this one. So this is exact token from here to here. So we need to access everything. We need to capture everything. From there, we have to extract only the token part. Okay, for that we need to write logic in the JavaScript. So let me write simple logic here to capture the access token from the response. So normally access token, the format will be like this. If it is a GitHub application. So let's say this is the access token format. Okay, now we need to extract from this response, we need to extract this particular access token. So how to extract the access token? So we need to split this whole thing based on the AND symbol. Okay, so if I look at this, this is a one, right? If this is the whole thing, so from everything, where is the AND symbol is present? So here, this is the one AND symbol is present, right? So based on the AND symbol, if I divide this, what will happen? So this is the first part. So this will be the first part, and this will be the second part. Now, again, in the first part, we have to split based on the equal to. Okay, so based on the equal to, we can split. And once we extracted this, we have to split by using equal to. Then what happens? This will be one part, and after equal to, this will be another part. Now we need to extract only this. So here we have to use one method from JavaScript, which is split function. So how to extract? You can say response dot body dot split. Okay, response dot body dot split. And here I'm splitting everything by using AND operator. Based on the AND, this is delimiter. Even Java also, we have this method, response.body.split. So this will return params from this access token. So we split from based on this AND symbol. So what happens now? This particular thing is one part, and this is the second part, and this is the third part. It will divide into three parts. And that I'm going to store in a variable. I'll call it as a params. Okay. Now again, from the params, we have to extract the first one, this one. Okay. And then we have to again split these two by using equal to, right? So then you will get the actual access token. So here, take these params once again. Okay. Params of 0, params of 0. Take this params of 0, and again apply same method, split, and this time we are going to split by using equal to, and we use index called 1, because if I split by equal to, so this one and this one will be extracted till here. This is the first one, this is the second one. So which one we need? This is the one. So this is a 0 element and this is the first element. So this one exactly return the access token that I'm going to store in a variable called access token. Access token. So we will create one constant variable, this access token, as a global variable, so that we will use the same access token in another request. So here I'm creating one variable, const variable access token, and keep it empty, nothing is there. So empty value. So now we have created the token. We have generated the token. So now what is the next step? We need to pass this particular token into the next request. So what we have achieved so far is this one. So we have successfully sent this access token request, post, and along with the client ID, client secret code. So once we get a response, this particular token, so we will use the same token for another request. So here we are getting all the repositories from the GitHub. And for that, we are going to pass authorization token as part of authorization. Okay. So this is the URL get request we have to send. That's the next step. So now if we go back, VS Code editor. So we have achieved the first step. This one is done. Now let us see the second step. We need to send get request by using this particular URL. So how to send this request by using this URL? So let's go and create one more it block. So this one is done. Now I'm going to create one more it block. It, and here, this is what? OAuth to request, and arrow function. Right. So this time we have to send get request along with the access token, which we have generated in the previous it block. So in the it block, we need to send a request. So what is a request? cy.request. cy.request. And here, what type of request you have to send? Get request. So request method is what? Get, comma. And what is a get URL we are going to use? So this is a URL which we are going to send. This is the URL. Okay. Now in the single quotation, specify the URL. So method URL, and how to pass this bearer token authentication. For that, we have to use something called headers. So as part of headers, we need to pass headers, and here we need to pass the bearer token authorization. So I can say authorization should be access token. So whatever access token we have generated in the previous request, right? We have stored that access token in the variable. So same access token we have to refer. But before that, we need to specifically tell which is a bearer token. So we need to add this keyword bearer and give one space and with the concatenation. So this is how we can pass this token as part of this get request. So once you send this request, now we need to validate the response dot then and capture the response, and that response, from that response, what we need to validate. So if we go back to the Postman tool, once you send this request, we got this data, right? So let us try to validate this ID or name or whatever. So few things we can validate. So status code 200 we can validate and ID we can validate. So whatever you want to validate in this response, you have to properly write a JSON path. And by using JSON path, you can simply validate the data in the response. So I just want to validate this ID and the status code. So what I'll do is in the response, we will put some assertion. I say expect and response dot status and dot to equal. Here you can say 200. This is the first assertion. Now I want to do data validation. So I'll put one more assertion, expect response dot body. And if I look at this, response dot body means this is a JSON array. This is the first record actually. And this is the second record. So there are multiple records are there. This is a whole response. So if you want to validate exact data, what you can do is you can just open the JSON path finder and you can easily generate the JSON path and accordingly you can access. If I just place, you can just copy this entire response. You can see, so these are the array elements, so 0 element, and this is the first element and so on. In the 0 element, the ID is what? This one I want to validate. So this is a JSON path. So body.id can directly use 0, body of 0.id. Similarly, if you want to validate the second record, body of 1.id. Similarly, body of 2.id. So in whichever the item you want to verify, you can just pass that index. So I just want to validate this ID, which is there in the 0. So what I can do is you can just go back and response body of 0.id. So that ID should be what? Dot to dot equal. And here we can specify what is the data we have. So currently my value is this one. So I'm just adding that value here. Okay, so this is how we can simply specify this validation. Now this particular request will use OAuth2 token. So that we are passing as part of this headers. Okay. Now this describe block is closed and this one is also got closed. So this is how we need to achieve that. In the first request, we are going to generate a token. And the second request, we are going to send access token. So this access token we can capture from the first request, which is post request. Okay. And before these two steps, we need to have client ID, client secret, and code. So these three things we have to extract from the client application. Okay. And then we can send the first request, post request, we will get the access token. And then by using this access token, we can send actual request. So again, if you look at the picture, so we have done this one. So this part we have done, and we have sent a request to the auth server. We got the token. Now by using the token, we have sent actual request to the resource server and get the resource, and then we have validated. Right. So this is how exactly OAuth2 authentication works. In this part will automatically internally happens. Okay. We don't need to send any request because our resource server will communicate with auth server with the token, whichever we have passed along with the request. Because the resource server, before sending the response, it will recheck the token is correct or not, or token is valid or not from the auth server. And if the auth server is responded, okay, token is valid, then our resource server will send the resource to the client application. Okay. So how many URLs we need? So to generate this auth code, we need one URL. And to generate the token, we need another URL. And this is the normal request, get request, put request, delete request, whatever you can send by using auth token. So this we have to do manually. And the second one we can send through Postman and through automation. And this also we have done through automation. But the first one we have to generate manually. We have to create an application, extract client ID and client secret auth code, and then continue with the rest of the URLs. So now what we need to do is we have to execute. So before executing, so I will generate a new code. In the first request, new auth code I will generate so that it will always expire. Okay, it will not be available for the long time. So we need to generate the new code. So how to generate the new code? I already told you at the beginning. So we have to send one request. So there's a prerequisite actually. So you can say prerequisite. That is for generate auth code. So for that, we need to send one authorization code URL. So that also I'm just providing here. That is basically GET request. So this is the one, and we need to pass the client ID here. So inside this, we need to provide the client ID. So if you send this URL in the browser, automatically what happens? It will generate the code. Okay, now what is the client ID I'm using here is, this is my client ID. So I will keep it here. So the same URL. Now with this client ID, I will pass authorize client underscore ID equal to this one. Okay, so this is the syntax and this is an example. Now, so we have to send this request in the browser so that we will get the auth code from the server. So let us try to execute this one more time in my browser. Previous code is already expired. Now I'm sending the another request. So once it is done, so which will generate the new code. So still it is not generated. So client ID is, I think, which is not correct. Let me put properly. The URL is not correct. Let me close this. Okay, now this is the client URL, client ID. Done. Okay, press enter. So now it is redirected. So now we got the code here. So this is the latest code which we have to use in our automation script. Go back and replace this code. This is the latest code. And client ID, client secret, everything is same. Okay. So once it is done, so let us try to execute. Now the first request will generate the token that we are going to store in access token. And then in the second request, we are sending the GET request along with this access token. Okay. So now save the file and then we will run it. Go to new terminal, npx Cypress, open. So this will open Cypress application. So in the Cypress application, click on end-to-end testing and go here. And now I'm going to execute. So you can see OAuth 2 authentication. Okay. So now somehow it is got failed. Assignment to constant variable. So there is a type error. So this is happens here. Access token params of 0.split. So let us see if you have done any syntax issue. So here in the post request, it is basically giving an error. So this is the params equal to response dot body dot split, and this is the AND symbol. Okay, fine. And access token equal to params of 0.split. In the double quotations, we say equal to and then bracket. Okay, fine. Do we define anything here? Yeah. So access token we have already created. That is fine. This is the variable. I think we have used same variable. Okay, so here the problem is, so we have created this variable access token as a constant, means we cannot change this value, but we are updating this value here, right? So instead of constant, I can just make it as a let. So once you make it as a let, then we can store any value in this variable. Now scroll down. So this will extract actual token from the response. And also I'm just printing the token here. So now the same access token we are going to use in the next request. Okay. So this code will keep changing. So we need to generate this code. So to generate this code, so we need to send this URL one more time. The first URL. So this will generate the auth code. And this particular auth code, we have to pass it here. This is the new auth code. So now I'm going to send a post request, get the access token. Now the same token I'm going to pass in the second request. Now let me save and execute. Okay, I'm just going to save it. Okay, so go to the file and then save. Yeah, perfect. Now you can see. So now my access token is got generated. Now this is my access token from the post request. And the same access token I'm using in the second request. Now this is the expected data which we are there in the body. So this is the code ID we are verifying. Okay. So this is how we can simply authenticate auth to authentication in Cypress. So only 3 steps. As a prerequisite, we have to pass the client ID and the auth code we have to get. And then in the second, we have to pass client ID, client secret and code, and along with this post URL. So this will generate the access token. Now, once you have an access token, you can send or you can test any APIs which are using access token, auth to access token. Okay, so this is the exact workflow of auth to access. So from the client application, we have to capture client ID and client secret and auth code. So once we have this, based on the client ID, client secret, auth code, we have to ask token from the auth server. So once it is generated the token, by using the token, we have to request a resource from the resource server, and again resource server will validate our token, and accordingly it will send the response. So this is how we can achieve auth to authentication in Cypress. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we will see one more topic. Thanks for watching.